I want to bring up something today about belt ranking and ranking systems in jujitsu. Now, I can only speak on comparatively the other grappling arts that I've been in, right? So wrestling and then less so judo, way less so. Most of my background is in wrestling. And then actually I've done more jujitsu than I have judo. So well, I did a little judo when I came right out of collegiate wrestling. And then I went back to coaching wrestling and then did jujitsu. Uh, Started out, I was like 39 when I started. So I've been doing it for like 5 years and then went back to judo to cross train a little bit for the last few years. Right. And um, so in wrestling, there's no belt system, right? Your ranking comes from your performance in competition because wrestling only exists for competition. There's no other reason to do it unless you're, wrestling in a jujitsu room to be or if you find like an adult school that specializes in wrestling and that's to help your jujitsu. Otherwise, you wrestle to compete. So the whole sport's built off that, right? And so like every weekend or every week, the rankings would come out like in the city, and then less frequent than that, the county, the district, the region, the state. In wrestling, like what was my rank? And I was always looking because I wanted to know who's ranked above me, if anybody, and then I need to beat that person. So that's like the person that I'm thinking about mentally to beat. But before that even happens, right? Like my school is really well known for wrestling. There was nationally ranked people at my high school currently and come from really well known families. And um I say this because it's really hard to make the team at my high school. Like it always has been that way. And my cohort, so freshman year to senior year, like that cohort of students was the first 4-year students where we went undefeated in dual meets, and then they maintained that for 20 something years, I believe, where they just they don't lose dual meets, right? Very depth team. You can weigh in 3 different people, and my coach could flip flop people around however he wanted to, whoever he thought was going to mix match styles and all that kind of stuff, right? Like as a team kind of thing. But like in order to make the team, you have to beat a lot of people, and there's 3 or 4 guys per weight class. And so the ranking starts in your own room, where like if you're not ranked first, you don't wrestle. And then when you do wrestle, then your rankings are dependent on how you fit into the city, county, district, region, state. And so in wrestling, it's very objective. If you lose, you're not first anymore. And then to get first back, you got to beat that person. I mean, look what's happened recently with Vito Arujau. Guy's a world champion, and he's lost twice this year. The same guy from Lehigh. And so, and they're going to meet up in the nationals for sure, right? That just goes to show you how competitive collegiate wrestling is. And just because he's a world champion doesn't mean he gets to come in with black belt status, with red belt status and be like, yep, I'm better than all of you. And I guess I don't have to compete anymore because he has to, right? So in wrestling, it's all dependent on competition. And in judo, and I don't know a ton about it, but I've been learning about it. There's a pretty objective criteria for belt systems. And my sensei won't rank you unless you compete. And then it's like, if you're getting wrecked, you're not ready to promote. And then if you start beating people at that rank, then you promote. And there's a whole system, and I don't understand it, but I know that it's objective, or at least more objective, right, than it is in jujitsu, which seems to be like a time-based thing, right? Like John Danaher said, just show up and you'll get your black belt, right? Because John has a 6th-degree black belt, and he has not been winning world championships to be a 6th-degree black belt. It was because of his time and because of the amount of people that he's produced, right? Like, and that's the way that they're looking at it. Because Helio Gracie actually said at one point, like, when he was promoting, I think it was Henzo, um, one of the Gracies, I remember was there, and he was promoting them, and he said, your promotion is based off of your teaching, because he says, like, he was like 90 at the time. He's like, I'm a blue belt in Rio. Basically, like, I'm an old man. I can't just mess people up, even though he's like a 10th degree black belt. So there is something to that, right? So, and I don't know what the right answer is, and I'm not taking one stance or another. People will freak out anyway, because that's what they do. They won't listen to what I say, and they'll, go puke all over the internet that I say that, you can't get a black belt in jujitsu unless you're a world champion. Not saying that, right? I didn't get into jujitsu until I was 39 years old, but maybe I never meet the criteria for a black belt, right? Like, what should be the objective criteria as a black belt? I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm not sure, though, that just time and everybody deserves a black belt club is the right way of going about it. I really don't think everybody deserves to be a black belt. I really don't. Um, there are people who I've rolled with who are close to getting black belts who, if I could beat them as a blue belt, that probably means maybe they don't deserve a black belt, especially if they've got a lot of weight on me. So, you know, I'm not sure what this means. I mean, my school had a different criteria for promoting people than other schools because my school went white, yellow, orange, green, then blue belt. And so it took years to get your blue belt. And he didn't care if you came in like with a wrestling background and can pin people and can escape people because you could like, before I knew how to get guard back and everything, I could bridge like you do in wrestling and keep people away from me, which I'm in like a not a real turtle position because I'm not completely conceding the position, but sort of bridge and turn and kind of keeping them at arm's length until I can get either to my butt or get higher than them and snap them down and take their own back, right? Like so I was wrestling when I first came in because I didn't know the jujitsu game. And then I started only playing jujitsu and then only being in a jujitsu sort of thing and playing the game didn't promote me any faster than somebody who just was not athletic and learning much slower and things of that nature. So I get that jujitsu is a giant business and a very successful one, extremely successful, right? But I'm not sure that like everybody deserves to be a black belt, just like not everybody deserves to be a state champion or a national champion or a world champion. And just because like Vito Arujau is a world champion doesn't mean he can't lose to people. He has been losing to people. And then people will text me like, how is this possible? How is it possible that Henry Cejudo got taken down in UFC? He did because the moves work, right? And so if I get wrecked by a white belt who's just one of those kids that's just like a phenom who comes in and can freaking triangle choke me, like, what am I going to do? Be like, I can't believe I got choked out by a white belt. Well, if I did, I did. Right. So there needs to be objective criteria. And like some schools, like Roy Dean, it looks like, at least from his channel, has like a belt testing kind of ceremony thing. And what do we need, for the sport? Now, I'm not saying one thing or another, right? I'm not saying that we need this in the sport. I think a lot of people do jujitsu just to get a workout, and I think that that's great. But just because you come and get a workout, does that mean you get a belt rank, right? So it's like just because you go to the gym and lift weights all the time, does that give you some gold medal? You know what I mean? Like, I think maybe like the participation trophy sort of thing of jujitsu isn't really helping. Like maybe the black belt should be kind of an elite thing, right? Like, and like I said, maybe I should, under criteria rules, right? As an old guy coming into jujitsu, I'll be 45 by the time I get back with my knee problem, right? Like maybe I never meet the criteria of black belt, and like maybe that's okay. That's not going to stop me from doing it. You know what I mean? It's like the goal isn't to get a black belt for me. The goal is to keep doing things and learning because it makes me better, actually. Like, well, I just like doing it, but it does make me a better coach, which I enjoy doing. I enjoy watching and helping the younger guys who can still compete a lot achieve goals that they want, right? To help put their system together so that they can do well because like it's a nice feedback, right, to have. Brandon Reed said something about like maybe you should compete at least just once at each belt. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, right? Like, and you can compete at your own weight class and age. I think that that's fine. And then you might say, well, nobody, well, I showed up and nobody was my age or rank. And it's like, well, I don't know. Do you get your money back? Because like, if nobody's there, right? Like, or, maybe they bump you up a weight or you end up going with younger people, but you're allowed to say no. You're always allowed to say no. You're always allowed to tap early, So I think being so scared to compete that you won't do it. And I know people have jobs, dude. I'm a neurosurgeon, like in animals. I do neurosurgery for a living. Yes, I need my hands, So, but I'm not making excuses. I tore my knee up getting ready to do judo competition because I wanted to see how I could do in judo, to see how far I can take it. And and I don't know what my plans are going to be like. Plans change, when you get back and stuff. But like, if I couldn't compete and the rules in judo say you have to get ranked, well, then I won't be ranked in judo. Does that mean that I'll never know any of it? No. Does it mean that John Donaher doesn't know jujitsu because he never competed? No, it doesn't. And so I'm not taking a side. I'm just kind of wondering if whether or not it should be somewhat of a criteria, because like we never know, right? Like you don't know what if a lot of the stuff that Donaher's teaching is absolutely legit, right? Like his jujitsu is fantastic, and we can see it happen in some of his athletes. But the question is like, would he have been able to do it, and how good would he have been, if he did compete, and what if he competed in his age category, right? Like, and that's a him thing, right? Like that would be for him. But do you get to be a sixth degree black belt in judo by not competing? No. My sensei is a seventh degree black belt, and that's all because of his competition in judo. He didn't get to seventh degree because he punched in a card, every time he showed up. So I think they're not the same, right? Jiu-jitsu and judo and wrestling in terms of what their goals are. Not everybody wants to compete, but like I said, like maybe not everybody deserves a black belt. Like I don't know if I deserve one as an old man doing what this is a different journey for me now, because like my body's wrecked. I have dislocated both shoulders, both elbows. I have spinal stenosis. And my back is terrible. I'm an inch shorter than I used to be. Like I've been life flighted before from my neck. I've had all kinds of really serious injuries, and so I'm not the same person that I used to be. And if it came down to it to be like, you need to do these things in order to compete, like I'm not sure that that would end up happening up to a certain point, right? Like, and so do those criteria need to change, or do we just keep pumping out black belts? It usually handles itself because a lot of people just stop showing up all the time, because getting to black belt takes a long time. But I just kind of want to know what people's thoughts are on it. There's pretty much like no real belt ranking system in no-gi, and it doesn't really matter because you don't wear it, right? And nobody really cares, right? Like, wasn't J-Rod like a blue belt like forever? And the guy was like, 180 cc trials. So it's like, is he really a blue belt? And it's like, oh, well, time. And it's like, well, time shouldn't be necessarily the only deciding factor, I think, for sure. I don't think time should be the only deciding factor. And I don't know if competition should be the only deciding factor, but maybe Brandon Reed's not wrong in saying, yeah, you should probably compete against somebody your own age and rank. That's really nice, right? Because in wrestling, you don't compete against somebody in your rank. You compete against whoever's there. You may get the national champion in your weight class on that day. And it's like there's no ranking system in that way. Your ranking system's based on how good you do, period. Um, and so, anyway, they're just, things to consider. I don't know what the answer is, but like I said, like if it came down to the fact that it was an objective criteria and I don't get a black belt because I'm not good enough, then I can live with that, right? But I'm not sure I want to be a black belt if I'm not capable of holding my own as a black belt. And maybe I never reach that. Maybe I'm too old, maybe I'm too banged up. But then again, it's like, this is that's an elite club. Maybe it should be an elite club, and maybe it's not like it used to be, like Jordan Presinger was talking about this. And so, I'm not a black belt. So I don't know if I'm not trying to speak on it, right? So if you are black belt and you can tell me what you think, I'd be really happy to hear what you have to say about it, because, I do see the teaching side of it as being extremely important. And, not everybody is super athletic, and some people can know how to do things conceptually without actually being able to do it themselves. So I can see both sides of it. I'm just kind of curious to see how you guys think about it. So try to be collegial in the comment section. And thanks again for watching.